good afternoon, welcome to episode 2 of Finding 50. I hope that you've all had a wonderful week and weekend. So in this episode I'm going to be talking about my children and some of the issues that they've been through whilst growing up. Okay, so I have written some notes, some I've printed out but I hadn't replaced my ink, so some of it is like blank, so that's great. So I've got my laptop here, so if you do see me looking down, that is why. You might be able to hear the fan going in the background, so apologies for that. Right, so this has been quite difficult in parts because there were some pretty tough times whilst they've been growing up, especially like the teenage years, the early teenage years. So, you know, bear with me if it does seem a little bit all over the place. So I will try my best to stick to the points. Okay, so this has been quite hard because I've had to revisit some moments through their teenage years that were quite hard to revisit. So I did cry a couple of times whilst I was writing it, and then I had to just put it down because I couldn't go through it at that time. So hence why my notes are a little bit scrambled. But anyway, okay. So I have got 2 children, 2 boys. Their names are Matthew and Mark. And Matthew is 22 and Mark will be 19 in a couple of weeks. Both of them were very much planned for, and as children, as little boys, they were an absolute dream. They ate pretty much anything, and you know, they were polite, very well mannered, they got on with people, they, you know, they were always very, very happy, and they were very kind to other people and just generally great kids. As a little boy, Mark pretty much slept from about 7 PM right through till 6 AM unless we were going out somewhere. Yeah, so he was pretty regular with his sleep. He would be, you know, pretty much on the dot. So that was really good. Matt was completely the opposite. As a baby, he was awake every 2 hours and like ready to play in the middle of the night, like 2, 4. And it was exhausting, I must admit. And he's pretty much the same now, to be honest, which is, you know, I think it's taken its toll on him over the years. Yeah, he never seems to shut off. So I think that has contributed to a lot of his problems growing up. So both boys sailed through primary school, pretty much, you know, making good friends and just getting on with things. They put up with a lot during my marriage to their dad because he was an emotional bully, and to me and to them. Not so much to them, but you know, if he could find a way not to be involved with them in any way, shape or form, then basically he would. He always put himself first, and the relationship between them all really was never that good, and was never something that has had a massive impact on them at all, really, negatively or positively. So I suppose I should be grateful for that, considering. So I kind of had to step into both parental roles, which was okay, to be honest. I consider myself to be quite a strong person, so I knew that I was up to the challenge, if you like. When Matt was 13 and Mark was 10, something happened in the marriage to finally split us up. It had been quite a venomous year, I would say, on the lead up to that point, and things had just got gotten so bad that it was just not healthy for the children to be around and in that environment. So with Dad gone, the house just seemed lighter and everybody's mood seemed to lift, and we weren't scared, weren't worried about saying the wrong thing or sparking an argument out of something random and irrelevant. So I think it just kind of calmed down quite a bit, which is great. So at 14, up here in Leicestershire, we have, like, the schools are split. So they've got the primary school and then they go up to a middle school, and then at 14 they change. So with their options and everything else, and all with the complications and the hormones and everything, they then have to change to an upper school or a high school. And I think this caused quite a lot of problems for both of mine in different ways. I noticed that Matt changed, you know, he became, well, a typical stroppy teenager really, and he was up far more than he'd ever been throughout the night. He was having trouble sleeping, and therefore he was grumpy when he went to school. And, you know, it's just little things. It wasn't all the time, but it was quite evident. He started to game, like, along with most boys his age, on like computer games, and he'd get frustrated, he'd scream at the screen, he would bang his desk. Still does that now, actually, now and again. And it was just quite stressful because he was keeping me and Mark awake. And, you know, Mark had been a relatively good sleeper up probably till that point. Not that I'm blaming Matt for that, because obviously Mark would be going through his own hormonal changes and stuff as well. So yeah, all in all, it was quite stressful at times, and, you know, having to deal with most of that on your own as well, you know. But you just do it, don't you? You just get on with it. So school was quite easy for Matt. He breezed through the years, you know, and the work very easily, and came out with some good exam results. So he didn't really find it very challenging, I would say. He didn't know what he wanted to do fully, but he liked the gaming world, so we found a college course for him, and it's a great college, but a bit difficult to get to from where we live, transport wise. And he started on the course. It was a games development course, and he was really excited. You know, I was excited, and they had just had their whole IT department all done out. They'd spent thousands on it, millions maybe. And, you know, I was really excited for him. He was excited to get to use all the latest technology. But kind of after a few months there, you know, he started to complain that it was just all written work. There was nothing creative, which is what he loves to do. So I think he became quite frustrated quite early on. And, you know, I became disillusioned with the course because it didn't exactly do what it had said on the tin, so to speak. So there were a lot of meetings with college, to and from, trying to sort out Matthew's place there, because he just didn't feel it was the right course for him anymore. And I was upset because I was like, what is he going to do? You know, this was supposed to be a 2-year course. It would be brilliant. He could possibly go to uni afterwards if he wanted to, or he might be able to get an apprenticeship and, you know, start making some money and making his way in the world. But that didn't happen. So after a number of meetings with college tutors, Matt decided to leave. At this time he'd also had a part-time job, so he decided that he wanted to just work for a bit, earn some money, get a bit of experience, which, you know, is great. So I was happy, he was happy, things started to settle down a bit. So the thing is, with both my boys, they're very creative and they are big thinkers, possibly overthinkers, a bit like me, unfortunately. And I think this has been their downfall career-wise, because to try and get a job doing something that they love, creative work, jobs, they just are very far and few between. So it's been quite a stressful journey. So at his place of work, he seemed to be doing well, and he was kind of rising up quite well, and he was, you know, getting more money, and he just seemed to really enjoy it. And then he started talking to this girl, whom I shall refer to as the witch from here on. She was a little bit older than him, maybe a year, not sure, but she had this air of being a lot older. It was kind of good in some ways. It wasn't too bad. She seemed a little reserved in some areas. But I think she put on this mask when she was around us. And looking back now, I can see a lot of similarities between her and my ex-husband. So at the time, you know, this girl sort of appears. She's making Matt very happy. Of course, you know, anything that makes your child happy makes mummy happy. And things were progressing. Everything seemed okay. So I'm going to read a little bit from my notes now. Okay. So it began to become apparent to me, Mark and Matt's friends, that she wasn't as good for him as we'd all thought. And little cracks were beginning to appear in their relationship. She spent Christmas 2016 with us, which was okay, but she didn't really join in, and Matt seemed very low at this time. The smile had vanished and he was ill quite a lot. Looking back now, it's obvious that things went right, but at the time you don't really notice it. I was going through a difficult time, both at work and personally, so perhaps I wasn't as fully alert as I should have been. So 2017 arrived, and things with Matt and the witch were not really that good. There were good days and times, don't get me wrong, but something just didn't feel right. She spent a lot of time here, and they isolated themselves a fair bit, and the house seemed quite tense now and again, especially when she was here. In July, myself, the boys, one of their friends and my partner Dan all went off to Tenerife for 2 glorious weeks in a supposedly top-notch villa. This holiday was incredibly difficult and not the holiday any of us expected. It started off badly as my parents were supposed to be coming with us, but unfortunately my mum suffered a heart attack and was told that she could not fly for at least 6 to 7 months. That was a devastating blow for my mum and my dad and for me, because I was so looking forward to them coming with us. But it wasn't meant to be. And when I look back now, it was probably a good thing that they didn't come, because when we got there, well, let me carry on. So when we got to the villa, it was an utter disappointment. It had so many problems from the outset and was not the luxurious 5-star villa that was advertised online. After 3 days trying to sort out problems with the management company and to no avail, Dan booked us another one further down the island, still in the south. And on our 4th day in Tenerife, we moved in. Well, wow, it was superb. We all loved it and we were so impressed by its luxury. Matt had returned to his stroppy 14-year-old self on that holiday. He missed the witch and either slept, moaned, refused to join in, or all of the above. It was very upsetting to watch, and we had several conversations over his attitude and behaviour. And during those conversations, I kind of had hope that things would change. But literally within a couple of hours after the conversation, things would just go back to normal. I kept saying that you will regret missing out on the experience when you're back at home locked up in your cave-like room. He told me that that is exactly where he would rather be. Dan wasn't happy on that holiday either, and he hurt his neck coming down one of the mega slides at the water park. So on that Sunday we decided that we were going to have a nice family day by the pool, not do anything else. We were just going to enjoy time together. We'd bought some nice food and drink in for that day, but because Dan had hurt his neck the day before, on that Sunday he wasn't very happy, couldn't move it. We'd gone out to find some paracetamol from a local chemist. Thankfully we found one open and he took some, but he just took himself off to the bedroom and stayed there pretty much all day. Matthew and Mark did the same. They locked themselves in their rooms, so Mark's friend and I were sat by the pool, sunbathing, not really speaking either, and it wasn't exactly the family day that any of us had expected, I think. I think he was pretty much bored and fed up with my boys, and to be honest I didn't really blame him at that point. It was quite a disappointment all round, and I cried a lot that day actually. I locked myself in the bathroom a couple of times and sobbed because I just felt, what a waste. You know, we are here on this beautiful island, you know, one of my favourite places in the world, in this absolutely stunning villa, and I'm stuck with 4 people that just don't really want to do anything. So I felt very much let down, very disappointed, and you know, I was upset that Matt was so miserable as well. So I wished right there and then that the girls had come on holiday with me and we could have just had a laugh, a dance, lots of drink, and just been stupid like we like to do when we get together. Anyway, to combat Matt's mood, I decided to message the witch behind his back and see if she could come out for the second week of our holiday and maybe lift his mood for a bit. I said, you know, it would be nice if you could just come out because he's really missing you. Clearly he's very miserable, he just wants to be home. She said, oh, you know, she didn't really have the money. So I said, look, don't worry about the money. We'll pay for your flight and we'll come and pick you up at the airport. And then suddenly she couldn't get the time off work. So I was like, oh, okay. So that didn't happen, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. I was very wary about having her there with us, but I thought it's been so crap up till now, maybe it won't be much worse. But anyway, it didn't happen. So we spent basically the final week of the holiday kind of treading on eggshells a little bit around Matt, not really sure what his moods were going to be like on different days, but he seemed okay, and we got through the last week. We did enjoy several days, so, and it was one of those holidays that will sort of stick with me forever. And I left a big piece of my heart in that villa. Our departure day came, and when we got back to the airport at Birmingham, the witch was there, so she came to meet him. I did actually know that she was going to be there, but he didn't, and he was absolutely overwhelmed. He just put his arms around her and they hugged. He didn't say anything, and I was quite relieved that he seemed happy again. She drove him back to ours and we waited for our taxi to pick us up. So when we got back home, everybody just disappeared into their own rooms, and later that day everything was kind of normal. Dan and I just got on with the usual stuff, and I think Dan had a couple of days off work and then he went back to work, and he worked away all week, so I found that quite difficult as well because of how I was feeling. I had been signed off work at this time, So 2017 wasn't a great year. But anyway, we plodded on sort of from July, you know, got back to normal. And in September, Mark started at sixth form, and you know, he seemed to like what he was doing at first, so all was okay. Matt carried on working. He sort of really couldn't decide what he wanted to do. And then in October, Matt and the witch split up. It was almost a relief, if I'm honest, and he didn't seem too bothered by it either. I think maybe he was a little relieved too. So he met someone else and just enjoyed himself. It wasn't serious, which is what he needed. It soon ended though, as she had issues that he just didn't want to deal with. You know, quite rightly so, after, you know, an up and down relationship. He went on to date a girl that was on her phone talking to her ex and her best mate more than she was getting to know him. What a joke. So after that, he just threw himself into work, which was kind of a blessing, I think. He seemed happier, but then Mark started to struggle at sixth form. So dealing with that, it was traumatic as well. So I noticed that his mood was dropping, and it was hard for him to get up in the mornings, as he had spent most of the night awake thinking about stuff. It kind of felt a bit deja vu at that point from the year before with Matthew. Christmas 2017, Matt seemed a little bit on edge, but his mood was kind of happy, so I didn't really think anything of it. I just put it down to him working and maybe being single again. Perhaps he was just enjoying that freedom. So when the witch turned up at our house again one day, I was a little bit thrown and a bit torn, because she was the obvious reason for his happiness, but basing on what she had been like before, I was worried, his friends were worried, and they had kept their relationship a secret for those very reasons. And it turns out they'd been seeing each other for a little while. You know, I was understanding because I wanted him to be happy, but in the same breath I was very worried because I didn't think that she was very good for him. And having been through very similar, I could kind of see that she wasn't very good for him, but what could I do? You know, I could only advise. I was kind of a bit of a bystander, I suppose, and I just wanted to be there. As the weeks went on during 2018, Mark was having issues with sixth form. I was back and forth there trying to deal with that. We changed one of his subjects, which seemed to work, and he seemed a lot happier. So we bumbled along again. At this time I was starting up my cleaning business as well, so I was trying to deal with the ins and outs of running a business and, you know, all that goes on with that too. And I was noticing that she wasn't really very invested in him and the relationship. She seemed to be making plans, like with her friends, and she was always posting like these fake happy photos on her Instagram and Facebook, the usual. And I think it kind of started to wind him up a bit, because she seemed to be withdrawing from him and not spending time or investing in their relationship. But I read somewhere that when somebody in that relationship kind of checks out of the relationship, which I think is what she did, then it's very easy for them to stop being bothered with you and to stop caring about your needs and your wants. So I think that's probably what she did. I think she checked out quite early on. But then we were all confused as to why she wanted to come back in the first place. So yeah, but anyway. She clearly had lack of respect for him and the relationship, and I could see he was hurting, and it was getting worse as the days went by. She seemed to be controlling the relationship and therefore him. I'd seen this behaviour before and I was quite disturbed by it. I couldn't tell him to end it because I think he would probably, well, one, he wouldn't have, and two, if he had have done, then he would have blamed me, more than likely. So like I said, I could only kind of stand by and be there if I needed to. I knew that if it was going to end, then he was going to have to be the one to do it, and I kind of kept advising him that maybe it's run its course and perhaps that was the best thing, but he just couldn't let go right at that point. So I tore myself in two watching how her lack of affection and unresponsive behaviour turned him from a kind, loving, trusting, happy man into a sad, lonely, confused, hurt and untrusting little boy. I hated her, but I continued to listen, support and be mum to him. I gave him words of wisdom and tried to guide him through his pain. It was clear by her behaviour online she was talking to someone else. On and off every few minutes, and he wasn't the reason. His texts were left unread. I believe this is called ghosting, I think. It just kept continuing to get worse. He was struggling because every time he messaged her she would ignore him, but he could see that she's online, so clearly either trying to make him think that she's talking to someone else or indeed talking to someone else. She had lost pretty much most interest in the relationship but hadn't actually said anything. So I think this is a very difficult thing for somebody on the receiving end of that. And if she had just said, look, I don't love you, I don't want to be with you, for me that's it, I think he would have coped with it a lot better. But because she kept him hanging on, but that's the controlling, narcissistic behaviour that narcissists enjoy, because they like to be in control. They like to think that you are hanging on their every word, and they're very charming in the beginning and give off this long game, I think, of behaviour that just draws you in, and by the time you've realised what's happening, it's too late. You can't get out because you've invested your time and emotions in this. And this is what he did. He'd invested so much time because they'd got back together, so he was happy about that, but it just wasn't working how he had hoped or expected. And her behaviour was quite sinister, controlling, nasty, narcissistic. He was suffering a lot. Her unwillingness to sort things and talk stuff through drove him insane. His suffering was evident emotionally and physically. No sleeping, stressed, angry, upset, being physically sick. He was scared, he was shaking, and he had pains everywhere. It's horrible to see, especially when it's your child, no matter how old they are. During this time, he said to me that with regard to some of her posts, she talks like I do. And it's like she stole who I was and then left me behind. When I think about that, that really upsets me, because it was like he was a little boy at that time and he just needed me, you know, and there wasn't much I could do about it, just comfort him. So I tried to turn everything that he said around to a positive, and I said, it's kind of a compliment if somebody copies you, your style, how you speak. It's, you know, it shows that you made some sort of impact on her. So maybe just take that as a compliment and try not to think of it in a negative way. He decided that he wanted to go and see somebody, a counsellor. So we found somebody that we could go to, somebody impartial, because he said, I like talking to you, but I just need to talk to someone else about it. Because to be honest, by this point, it was very, very hard. This is May 2018, so everything had blown up by this point. There were things that had gone on with Mark, which I will be telling you about in a minute. And, you know, like I said, I was trying to start up a business. I was still going through my own personal journey of the perimenopause, and everything was up in the air. So it was very, very scary, very unsettling, and almost seemed quite hopeless at that point. And I was quite grateful, I think, for Matthew to have somebody else to talk to outside the family that wasn't involved, and hopefully would perhaps bring him some comfort and a resolution to this huge issue for him. He went to a chiropractor as well for the pains like in his neck and his back, and they said that he had suffered, I can't think what he said now, something trauma basically to the trapezium muscle, I think at the back, the big one at the back. They said that he had suffered severe trauma, so whether that was brought on by stress or by his job or a mixture of both, we couldn't ascertain, but it was there. So it was, all these problems had kind of come out in a physical reality, and he was suffering. That's really hard to see when it's your child. It's really difficult. And like thinking back now to that time, it was so traumatic. There was so much going on that year. I wish I could be shocked at how one person's behaviour can affect someone else's so badly, but unfortunately I'm not shocked. And that's not a good thing. So as the year went on, Matt decided that he would like to go and do a carpentry course after sort of looking at different things. You know, we suggested during one of our many conversations, it came up that it would be perhaps best if Matt could get some sort of trade behind him. And I knew that, you know, he wasn't going to be a builder or electrician or anything like that, but I said, well, what about carpentry? You know, it's an amazing skill to have. So he went to a few college interviews and sessions and stuff, and then eventually decided that, yeah, why not? So he enrolled on the college course part-time, still working, so he didn't really have anything to lose. And that started in September. So in the October, I had decided to book a holiday back to Tenerife and to try and right all the wrongs from the previous visit, from the previous holiday. It was just the four of us, and I made sure like the flights were at good times, food was supplied on the flight, we had a nice apartment that was cheap, in a really good central location, one of the best. And to be honest, we only went for a week, but it was a fantastic week, and I felt that we definitely cancelled out all the wrongs from the holiday in 2017. Everything was better. It was like it had balance again. And Matt enjoyed that holiday. He was engaged, he was happy. You know, he'd kind of found his balance again, so that was brilliant. Mark was enjoying it too, because he had started on a college course at the same time, at the same college, different courses, and you know, I was really happy to see them sort of getting happier. And things just started to get better from there. I think Matthew sort of spent a lot of time after that. When we came back, he just got on with work, and then he met his present girlfriend, Alyssa, who is beautiful and funny and kind and loving and everything that the witch wasn't and probably never will be. So he's been very happy, and that for me is just great, because after everything, that's all you want, isn't it? For your child to be happy. And he's put up with so much. So anyway, I could probably go into a lot more detail, but there's only so much that you can kind of remember and piece together from some traumatic times, and I don't think he wants me to sort of go into too much detail either, because he's happier now and he's in a much better place, and that is the important thing. He's in a much better place. He's happy with his girlfriend and things are looking up. Okay, so that is some of what he went through. Okay, so now on to Mark. Everything kind of happened all at the same time, I think, for all three of us. So 2017 and 18 weren't particularly good years for any of us. So if I go back to September 2017, Mark has started sixth form. Over the first term of sixth form, I'd been backwards and forwards to see college tutors, deputy heads and everybody else, trying to sort Mark out, because he wasn't happy on the courses or in the subjects that he had picked, and they allowed him to change one of the subjects. So it was brilliant, a good little lifeline, and something I thought he would be okay with. As it got sort of nearer to Christmas, he didn't seem very happy, and even though I changed subjects for him, I was trying to help him. Obviously I was going through things with Matt as well, and myself, and it was just such a bad year, I think. So 2018 started and it was okay. You know, obviously Matt had got back with the witch and they were spending quite a bit of time in and around the house, not really respecting Mark's sort of presence, I suppose. Mark had a lot of homework to do and a lot of coursework, and it seemed to just be piling up more and more, and I think it was getting to him. So again, I was speaking to tutors and I said, look, what can we do about this? And we sorted out something, but it wasn't enough. His mood was very low, and he was starting to take a few days off sick here and there with stomach problems, headaches. And I just thought, oh, he just doesn't like sixth form, he's just not settling in. So I said, well, you know, maybe we could get you on to an apprenticeship. So we kind of looked at that, but it was kind of clear that that wasn't the right route either, and we were kind of only left with the college route. So we popped into college and we had a good chat with somebody there, but he wasn't engaged at all. He was silent, And I just felt like I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me whole, because I thought, my God, you know, this is quite embarrassing. I'm trying to do this for him and he's just sat there silent. And this poor lady has come to the meeting and she's given us all this information and he's just sat there. And I wanted to shake him right at that point, you know, because I was really cross. And I thought, here I am doing all this stuff. I'm doing this for you. I'm listening to Matt all the time, going on and on and on about the witch and how this is happening and that's happening. You know, I'm hating the way I'm looking. I'm not seeing my partner because he's away all week working. And yeah, it was just crap. It was. So then Easter came and went. Mark pretty much spent most of the time asleep or just locked up in his room, coming out for feeding time, and that was it. I was concerned. I wanted to help him and talk to him, but he just wouldn't open up. He'd become really, really reserved. And you know, when I think back to how happy and cute and bubbly and bouncy he was as a child and baby and everything, to see this boy in front of me now, he was just almost a stranger. It was quite sad. He was due to go back to sixth form the Monday after Easter, which was I think the 24th of April 2018. It might have been the 26th, I'm not sure. At 7:30 he still wasn't up, there was no sign of him, so I went into his room and he was there in bed. So I was like, Mark, you've got to get up, you know, we're going to be late if you don't get up, because we have to leave at 8 o'clock because I would drop him off and then I would go on to work. So he sat up in bed and he told me he didn't feel too good. I was a little concerned, as like I said, it was getting to be a bit of a habit. What's wrong? I asked. He paused and shook his head. I could see all was not right, and I put a reassuring hand on his shoulder. It's okay, I reassured. Whatever it is, we can sort it out. Of course, I was nowhere near prepared for the devastating blow he was about to deliver. He started to cry. I felt my heart drop. What could this be? Bullying? That was top of my list. Drugs, maybe? It's okay. It's okay, I said. Whatever it is, you can tell me. Come on, just tell me, it's fine. I keep hearing voices in my head and they're telling me to end it. They're telling me to end things. I paused for a moment, trying to get the words through my head, trying to make some understanding. He was sobbing. But I didn't panic and I didn't cry. I just looked at him and I think mum mode just set in. Okay, I said. That sounded quite strong and decisive. I'm going to call the doctors and then I'm going to call the school. You are staying here in bed. I'll be back in a minute. I hugged him tightly. Thank you for telling me, Mark, I said quietly, as my heart pounded loudly in my chest. I went downstairs and I picked up the phone. The receptionist answered, and as is normal practice at our surgery, she asked what the problem was. As I explained in the briefest but most descriptive way that I could muster, her kind and sympathetic manner blew off my outer hard shell and the tears flowed. I'm sorry, I apologised, but she was really kind, really sympathetic and understanding. She said, I will get the doctor to call you as soon as possible. Please don't worry. I called the school next. They were sympathetic too. I cried again. After I put the phone down, I composed myself and I went upstairs to tell Mark. He seemed relieved. Like you could just see him, like his tenseness just relax. Within the hour, the doctor had called back. We had an emergency appointment. He wanted to sleep for a bit, so I let him. Then I woke him up. We had a bit of lunch and then we went down to the doctor's. At the doctor's, he wanted to go in by himself. I felt sick. I wanted to go with him. I wanted to pick him up. I wanted to pick him up and cradle him in my arms. No mother wants to hear those words come out of a child's mouth. I selfishly started to think that I was a crap mum. I hadn't done my job properly. I looked around and saw no one else with the same problems or issues in their lives. Their kids seemed happy, sociable, lives in order, sorted. I was so busy, wrapped up in my own feelings and trying to keep Matt afloat after a narcissistic relationship that I never saw it coming. For that, I will be eternally ashamed. He was diagnosed with depression and a blood test was booked for the next day. 2 days later, we had the counselling service, CAMHS, come here. So they came in and it was kind of a relief that things were being sorted, and for once I didn't actually feel so alone. They had a session with him. I sat out of the room. I think he was in the lounge with them for about 45 minutes chatting away, and then they asked me to come in. They told me that he was at crisis point, and at this point he was being put on suicide watch. I felt my blood and soul drain from my body. Suicide watch. The words ran around my head, screaming at me. How did I not see this? You are a terrible mother. He wasn't to be left alone, and all knives in the house were to be removed or put away safely. As he had told them that the voices had told him to slit his throat. So, yeah. I felt so lost. I couldn't speak. I just kept looking at him and smiling and holding his hand, trying to reassure him. I messaged Dan and told him about it, and he was totally shocked. And I said, you know, I'm going to need your support and help. And, you know, he said, oh, I'll try and help, you know, as much as I can. I couldn't even turn to Mark's dad for support because he wouldn't have even bothered, to be honest. It would have probably turned around to be something wrong with him as well, you know, because that's how he was. With me only having started up my business 2 months previous, I was kind of left a little bit torn. And then my dad was due to go into hospital in April for a knee replacement. So it was all like happening all at once, and I just thought, how am I going to cope? Because my mum doesn't drive, so my dad needs taking to the hospital, picking up. My sister lives too far and has got younger children. Now I'm going through all this. I just didn't know where to turn. CAMHS were brilliant because they gave me a number as well, and they said, if you need to talk, you can ring up at get a grip. You can ring up at any time and we will be here for you as well, which was amazing. And God forbid that if you ever are experiencing anything like that with one of your children, then please know that they are amazing and very, very supportive. I kept checking on Mark. I found myself asking him if he was okay, even though I knew that was probably the last thing that he wanted or needed. I just felt helpless. Matt was upset and shocked. He'd gone in to speak to Mark and said, please don't kill yourself. Ooh. And that makes me upset as well, because I thought, God, you know, if Mark does kill himself, it's going to leave a huge hole for me, but just as much of a hole for his brother, because they're so close, and I would then be left dealing with Matt's pain as well as my own. So yeah, it was a pretty scary time. So over the next few weeks, Mark was having counselling sessions here, and in between those sessions I suggested we go and do something sporty, maybe badminton. So Mark and I went off one evening to our local sports centre and we just had one session of badminton. He wasn't really that engaged, but he did say that he quite enjoyed it, but didn't really want to go again. I found myself trying to make endless suggestions, you know, shall we go swimming, shall we do this, shall we go to the cinema, blah blah blah. He quite liked the cinema idea, so we had gone to do that a couple of times, which was great. But I found myself not wanting to go to work or going out with my friends because I didn't want to leave him alone. I was scared, you know. I just thought, if I leave him alone and then I come home and find him, I don't know what I'll do, you know, and then I'm going to feel guilty and I'm going to have all these feelings as well as that loss. It was terrifying, and I don't think people around me fully understood. Well, I mean, how can they? You know, friends, I didn't tell everybody like the full story. Only one of my friends that I told, you know, she knew like everything, and she was very, very understanding, very supportive, as she is with everything, but she couldn't possibly feel exactly how I was feeling at that time because it wasn't her child. So, you know, and even Dan, he worked away all week, like I said, so he wasn't in the thick of it. There was only me that was dealing with it, you know, right in the middle, and having to keep checking on him and making sure he was okay, and worried about going away or doing anything, and just having some sort of normal life was just terrifying. I just couldn't even imagine it. At the time we went to the college on a second meeting, and in that meeting he was looking through the book at the different courses, and he said, oh, this one sounds quite good, the IT. So I was like, oh, a bit of enthusiasm here, let's run with this, let's go for it. And the IT guy came to speak to him talk to him, and the way that the college, you know, that college works seemed just so much better and seemed to suit Mark perfectly. And we decided that was what he was going to do. So he enrolled in college. He decided to learn Japanese, and he started to get well into all the culture of Japan and everything. So he really sunk his teeth into that. And then he said about playing the guitar. So for his birthday in June 2018, I bought him an acoustic guitar and an electric guitar. He absolutely loved it. I started to get him some lessons just locally, and in between that and the counselling, and with college to look forward to, I think things started to pick up quite a bit. He kept having counselling sessions. I think it was every 4 weeks at this point now, because he was showing massive signs of improvement. Oh, and in May as well, at the end of May, he started on medication, fluoxetine he was on, just a very, very low dosage. And at first he said it was really helping. But I think over the following few months he started to say that he felt quite sluggish on it. He just didn't feel like himself, which I suppose it's there to mask some sort of feelings and help you get through depression, but I don't think it was working for him. Anyway, like I said, in October 2018 we went on our fantastic Tenerife holiday, and it was just amazing. And he was so open to new things. And on that holiday, on the Saturday, we signed the boys up to do this sort of, I don't know what you call it, on the ropes, you know, where you swing between things, that thing. I've probably put it up here somewhere now. Yeah, so they both went off for the day to do that, but it was up in the trees. These trees were like on the side of a very, very tall mountain, and the height was just incredible. But he overcame that. He said he found it incredibly difficult, and at one point he just wanted to like get down and just run off and go home. But he said, I knew that I'd be disappointed with myself if I did that. So for me that was like, oh my god, I was so proud of him for that. So proud. And you know, I kept telling him that. I said, you know, you should be proud of yourself, and he said that he was. And you know, the fact that he did it, it was quite an achievement. And they went off and did a few water sports things, went on jet skis, and they had such an awesome time. Hopefully I might put a few photos up, because there's one particular photo I just love, of them on the jet skis, or just about to go onto the jet skis. I think that's a beautiful photo of the pair of them. And also this other one, either here or here somewhere. Yeah, just my favourites. I think it kind of captures the mood of that holiday. They were just so much more upbeat, and yeah, I love it. Anyway, going back to June 2018, sorry I'm all over the place. In June, well, it was kind of actually the end of May, a lifeline appeared in the form of a text from an old school friend, the only one to have bothered to ask if he was okay and why he was not in school anymore. He was having a party, and he had invited Mark and a small group of others that Mark knew. He accepted, even though he was scared and worried and, you know, anxious. But he was really happy, and he was over the moon that this boy had taken the time to actually invite him. So the night of the party, I wasn't keen for him to go. I was really worried because, you know, it'd only been a couple of months. You know, he's on medication now. He doesn't drink, so that wasn't the issue. I was just scared, and I thought, what if somebody says something to him, or what if there's a knife lying around? What if he's still got those voices? Because he said he still hears them, but they weren't so present. So all the anxieties that he was feeling, I was feeling too, perhaps in different ways. At one of the sessions from CAMHS, we found out that the A-levels were one of the biggest causes and contributors to Mark's voices. He said that after breezing through GCSEs, where he was confident and comfortable, A-levels were a whole different ballgame. He found himself in a difficult and awkward scenario of not knowing as much as the other students, his words, and feeling that he was totally alone in a class of 25. He told me that he stood up one day in class, looked around at everyone just getting on with it, and realised that he didn't know anyone and wondered if they'd actually cared about him. So this text from his friend was an absolute lifeline, and I don't think that that boy will ever realise that he possibly saved Mark's life. So anyway, I dropped him off at the party. I was nervous and terrified of how he would handle it, and I waited back at home for his text to pick him up. I kind of expected him to message me pretty much straight away, saying, "Oh, I can't stand it, I want to come home," but he didn't. He stayed until midnight. I was worried that his friends might know. After all, they knew that he wasn't at school, and he hadn't been there for almost 2 months. I finally got the text. "Mum, can you pick me up, please?" It was midnight. The time the party was supposed to end anyway, so I was very pleased. I was hoping that he'd enjoyed it. So I waited patiently outside his friend's house for him to emerge. As he did, I noticed something different about him. He was smiling. He was talking, almost laughing. He said his goodbyes. Including to the group of teens that were sat on the drive, and they all cheerfully said it back, smiling and waving. And I heard one of them say, "See you at the next one, Mark." Progress was being made, and I felt the happiest that I'd felt in weeks. So as the months were going on, Mark was making so much more progress, and I said he was seeing a counsellor once every so often. I can't remember whether it was every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks by this point. And it was a lot easier for both of us because I was trying to work around his counselling sessions, and my dad eventually went into hospital for his knee replacement in the August, so I had my mum here for a week, which was great actually, because it was nice having that company as well. Yeah, so that was all going on, and we were like helping him with his recovery. So because Mark was doing so well, he was taken off like crisis point, and he was put into like another part of the service, like another umbrella of branch of the service, if you like. And I think that's when it kind of became every few weeks. They were so pleased like with all his efforts and everything, and the fact that he was helping himself, because he had this app, I think it was the CAMHS app, I think, and that was really, really useful for him, you know, in the beginning. I don't think he uses it now, but I think he did at the very, very beginning. He had overcome some pretty major hurdles: the party, the induction days at college, which were quite stressful, but he got through those. Then starting college itself, another big like day for him. The trees, I want to say tightrope, but it's not. I still can't remember the bloody name of it. How weird. It's just literally gone out of my head. Never mind. And teaching himself new skills, Japanese, the guitar, fantastic. He was keeping himself on track. he even gave himself like an objective list to try and complete each week, and I think that was quite handy. So I think around October 2019 now, so like just over a year later, Mark finished with his medication, and then he, because he'd made so much progress, he was signed off completely out of their service but put under like the doctor. So because he was 18 now, so they said if he needs any more help then he'd have to go back to the doctors instead. He's learned to open up and talk about his feelings a lot sooner and seems pretty comfortable doing so. I know that that was very difficult for him to do, to start opening up, but he has learned that. So, you know, a painful lesson, but he's learnt it nevertheless. And he even told Matt that once, when Matt was having sort of a few down days over trying to decide what to do about college and about his future. And Mark has said, you know, the one thing I've learned is that I need to speak up. So he said, if you have any issues or feelings, you need to speak up and you need to talk about them, because they can be dealt with, and the more people that know, the more support that you've got. We roll on forward to May 2020 as we are now, and he's coming to the end of his college course, obviously with the coronavirus and the whole world being like it is at the minute. Nobody really knows what's happening, but he's been doing his college work at home. He enjoys the course. I don't think he has learned as much as he had hoped, but I just want to say that there are so many like teenagers and young adults, not necessarily teenagers, as well as adults. Like, there's always somebody going through some sort of dark time and maybe unable to express how they're feeling. And I think it's really important that perhaps if you know somebody and you see a slight change in their behaviour, they're not doing the things that they would normally do, they might be isolating themselves more, withdrawing from group situations, just take time out and, you know, stop by and ask them how they're doing, ask them if they need help, just tell them that you're there. And I know it's very difficult, because if you are in that situation yourself, sometimes you just don't know how to tell somebody how you're feeling, because one, you might not actually know yourself, and two, you might not be able to articulate the way you feel, and three, you might feel embarrassed. But don't feel embarrassed. It's not a problem, and it's much more commonplace than should be allowed to be, but it's, you know, a fact of life now, unfortunately. Not just for young people, but for anybody. And if you are a parent of a teenager, young adult going through something very similar to what I've been through with Mark or with Matt, then, you know, please message on here, or, you know, reach out to somebody, because, you know, you are not alone, and it is hard, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. But you have to be brave and you have to speak up. You can't bury your head in the sand with something like this. It's far too important. You know, we've been lucky. We have come through it together. It's not been easy. It's been miserable, and it's been lonely. It's been scary, terrifying even, and you know, there have been so many days where I've wanted to just give up. You know, as I'm sure Mark has had those days as well. So it's a horrible thing to go through. It really is. And if you can talk to anybody about it, including me, or message on here, however you want to do it, please just reach out. I have sort of said to Mark it would be nice perhaps if he had like a little corner on one of these episodes episodes where he could talk to the younger people going through the same thing that he went through, because he's been there, he understands, you know, he has that empathy, he, you know, is aware of what that person will be going through and how to best help them maybe. And sometimes just having somebody to reach out to, talk to, who's been in a similar situation and understands, is sometimes all they need. Or maybe that one friend that, unbeknown to them, and out of the blue, send that person that one text that could possibly save their lives. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I'm sorry if it's been quite hard to listen to, and emotional or sad, but you know, we are all in such a much better place, and I wouldn't say all jumping for joy, because it's still there, it feels like it hangs around, but I think we're more able to deal with those days that are quite hard and they don't really seem as bad. But I do still check up on Mark. That quite often. I make sure that he comes down and sits down with me, especially like in the evenings. We have our dinners together and we watch films. So we always have that, and I try and have conversations with him. He is not always willing to have that like conversations with me, but he's very passionate about the things that he does enjoy, which is the Japanese and the guitar. He's really good at the guitar, and he's fantastic at Japanese. So I am going to wish you all a very pleasant Monday afternoon and the rest of the week. I hope that you have a great one, and I will see you next week in episode 3. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed my video on Auntie Avon yesterday. That was on the Anu range, and on Wednesday I have a video using the eyeshadows from the Avon True Quads. So hopefully you'll enjoy that one. Anyway, I'm Karen, so I will see you next Monday.